We are back in Senate Judiciary. A few minor tech issues, but we have the Defender General with us to go over the budget request. We'll be getting hard copies here in a couple of moments in your presentation.
I'm happy there. I know the Defender General for those who don't know, I think everybody here knows, those who aren't here know as well. I run the public defense system and I'm responsible for administering the budget for the public defense system. There are some newer folks here probably don't understand how this system is structured because very few people do. The generals are appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, and after that happens, it's supposedly independent and not supposed to be supervised by any other branch or agency of government. So I'm not like another cabinet agency that serves at the will of the governor once I'm appointed, and that's primarily because we represent a constituency that's not particularly attractive, and you don't want the system's designed so that the politics and the funding vigorously pursued when you're doing that on behalf of the clients, as opposed to any kind of politics or other issues that might come out from the legislature, the governor, or some other branch of government, public safety, state's attorney, sheriffs, or whatever. The budget's broken into two different sides. You've got the public defense budget, which is what you consider your primary public defenders, staff offices, and contract offices that they qualified financially. We represent over 85% of the people in criminal court. We represent almost 100% of the people in juvenile court. Oddly enough, there's about 10% of the people who don't have a lawyer in criminal court, and private attorneys that I used to be only represent about 5% of the people in criminal court. Second side of the program is what we call the assigned counsel side, which is the conflict side of the program. So when cases come in and there's 4 co-defendants, the primary public defense office with the lot could handle one of those cases. And then we have contractors, systems designed this way to avoid conflict, have the contract side of the program, the conflict side, and those cases are assigned on a county basis. When we overflow those contractors, I have caseload relief contracts all over the state that pick up the overflow. The other part of the program that we have is serious felony offenses. Right now, they only handle murders. But there's murders and there's murders. And there's ones where someone is alleged to be the actual perpetrator of the murder, and then there are those who are the accessories and the people who allegedly aid in the murder or attempted murders and the like. Those all go to serious felony offense. That's a system that I designed 24 years ago to try to get the most experienced lawyers handling those most serious cases. Fundamentally, the governor's recommended budget, which is exactly what, frankly, the House passed. Yeah, much down. Yeah. Yeah, you over there? I actually seem to have got nothing in that to make things work. This will make it a lot easier for me. I mean, I can,
Shut off.
tells what we do. I just got to run through that. One of the unique things we also, it's not unique, like really, but one of the things we do, and it's become more important lately, in disruption situations. There was a case a few years ago at the University of Kentucky that a Supreme Court case that indicated that immigration issues related to criminal cases are something that criminal lawyers to be adequate in what they do have to consider. Vermont also passed a statute in Governor Scott's first term that gave the Defender General's office the responsibility to represent people in immigration matters as they arise in the course of what we do, and it's becoming more of a kind of more of an issue, as you might expect nowadays. A lot of times, however, we don't know what's going on with those cases, but I see that becoming more of an issue going forward. This is what the kind of chart of how we broke that down. I just talked about that public defense side, assigned counsel side. We also have the prisoners' rights office, the juvenile defender's office, and the appellate division, and then administration, which handles pretty much what I'm talking about right now, getting everybody paid, get the job done. Everything is lagging. So we've been within budget for 23 consecutive years without requesting money in budget adjustment. This year we did request budget adjustment, and there's something I'm going to bring up here that's a little bit new. This battle that's going on about Budget Adjustment Act and contains within it something that is not in any dispute right now whatsoever. It's in fact an agreement between myself and the Secretary of Administration and the Finance Commissioner. Earlier this year, we requested some positions out of the position pool, and they basically said, you know, the position pool is a finite number of things. They won't be there for somebody else, but you have all of these limited service positions that were granted to you and extended over a period of time. Why don't you just turn those limited service positions into permanent positions? And they actually suggested that we've done a budget adjustment. The reason, why is this really kind of a non-issue? Because last year in the 25 budget, we got all the money to fund the positions, but it all happened kind of during the conference on the budget, and they forgot to put the positions in to match the money that we received. So they're already funded. They're just sitting there. I thought I'd have these a couple of months ago, but things happen in the meantime. We're sort of caught up in this. So one of the things, Senator Norris, that I need to make sure is that I don't know what's happening with this budget adjustment bill, but if somehow something goes screwy, the exact thing that's in there should be in the big bill going forward. I just need those positions. I already have the money to do it. I'm not asking for any more money. It's just to transfer, put those positions as permanent. And that's all. There's no dispute over that. We're not part of the battle, so to speak.
What, you looking to keep them as limited service positions?
No, they're converted to permanent positions because we got the money to fund them in the base already.
What the hell's the?
Well, I didn't know that budget adjustment was going to get vetoed twice. So, it was passed. They were in there. They were in there when you passed it twice. It's just that as of right now, I don't know what's going on. It may end up being that you consolidate everything that's going on. And by the time you're done, you'll have a budget adjustment act and a big bill that passes at the same time. Or not, or get consolidated, or seen some odd things happen. I just need to make sure you've seen these positions already. and they've passed both sides multiple times at this point. In any event, we have some challenges going forward. I'm not asking for anything to provide any new services. All I want to do is fund what I've got going forward. And there are certain things that are, required. You have a union contract. You got to fund your cost of living increases, your benefits and the like. Same thing with the exempt attorney pay plan and the pay plan addendum. We have leases and rents and things like that that need to be funded. I can tell you a little bit about how we're doing from a money standpoint or from a caseload standpoint. Over the last couple of years, caseload does keep going up. And this lists this is added criminal cases for fiscal year 24. It's about a 7% increase. This is on top of a double-digit increase last year. Other cases, see that portion there that I put in red and they're highlighted. Those are probation violations, and those are up almost 60%. It's just the accumulation over a period of time on top of a backlog that we already have that causes the issues that you're seeing with backlog. So the important thing to take out of this is the backlog is one thing, as we will do that. But these cases that have come up in fiscal year 23 and 24 hadn't made the backlog yet, but they're going. It's just a matter of time. These are we call them family cases, but this is the juvenile caseload. Juvenile caseload is pretty steady, except for one thing, and you can see there, it's in red and a little highlight there. Over a 40% increase in termination of parental rights cases. The others have seen some decline, but the termination cases have got crazy, to be honest, in fiscal year 24. This is a different way of showing what we already talked about from fiscal year 24. And we have through the first quarter of fiscal year 25 as well. So we're seeing an increase in fiscal year 25 as well, which started last July. Our criminal cases in the first quarter of 25 went up almost 6%. That's on top of the 7% that we saw in fiscal year 24 and the double-digit increases that we saw in 23. And this is kind of the impact on the criminal backlog. And we have this. I actually have some newer information on this, but there are a number of counties, particularly some of the bigger counties, a little scary, where the backlog is getting worse, not better. And where it is getting better, it tends to be in the smaller counties that are more manageable. This is another way of this is the numbers through February 1st of 25. And if you look at the clearance rate on the right, anything that's over 100%, that clearance rate means they're making progress. And if it's under 100%, that means they're going backwards. The backlog's getting bigger in those counties. And you can see there's a significant number of those counties. In summary, this is what you're seeing. The statewide overall criminal clearance rate through December was only 89%. That means we've lost 11% of the backlog. 4 counties made progress on the backlog. 3 of those counties were the smallest counties. All of the largest counties lost significant ground. And those, when I talked about 23, 24, 25, which is how I started this, those aren't even that is not in the backlog yet, particularly 24 and 25. So we've
Could you
got,
back it up one month, please? I was looking at Greendale County.
yeah.
They
Yeah,
had 525%.
yeah, they did. They had, you know, if you look at it, they have during that quarter between between January 1 and February 1, they had no new filings for felonies, no new filings for misdemeanors, and no new total cases. So they had no filings. So whatever they did was going to get at the backlog. Grand Isle, like, I don't care what happened. You know, it's a hand load of cake. It's not even, it's not a Monday in Chittenden County, you know, the entire farm. Or Wyndham County for that.
I just thought that was a big percentage, and now I see why. Okay.
It is, yeah, you know, 525% of nothing is, well, you know,
That's not.
yeah. There's nothing to add. So everything you do is making progress. But this is kind of the summary of where we're at through the end of December. If you look at this graphically, and I really like this particular slide because it really shows you what we've done. There has been some progress. That dotted line is the progress, but I've used this analogy before. We're effectively paying our credit card off by making the minimum payment every month. So in 39 years, we're going to have it paid off, but we're not making tons of progress. One of the things you notice too is we tend to make some progress right as we hit the summer. Then the summer comes along, and all the charges that come in the summer spike because they get a rain in the fall, September, October. Then it spikes the backlog, and then they start to work it down again as the winter comes. And I anticipate what you'll see again, because I've seen this now happen over year after year, is that we'll make progress. Summer hits, and I remember this when I was in private practice. It was, you know, this when I'm, you know, all your fights and DUIs and all that stuff when everybody gets together for Memorial Day and 4th of July, Labor Day, everything in between, and then the caseload spikes. But this is where we are. So there is progress being made. Now, one of the hopes is that the 4 judges who just took the bench are going to make some progress with this backlog. But as of this time, that hadn't hit yet.
I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how the backlog impacts your office and what would be needed in your office because obviously these things are all linked, like we can give more judges, but I imagine your office has a role in helping clear the backlog as well.
Yeah, we do. But here's the reality of it. And it's one of the reasons I didn't ask for even more positions or more money or whatever. I don't have everybody to hire. You can give me $2 million right now and say, oh, go out and hire 20 lawyers. They don't exist. Everybody, all I do nowadays is shuffle deck chairs. You know, I try to get people at the right places where the spikes are in the particular counties, but I've got contractors coming, contractors going, a lot more going than coming lately. And it really impacts this. The lawyers don't exist who are ready, willing, and able to do this work. So if you gave me $2 million and said hire, you know, maybe I could hire 1 or 2, but I basically have everybody who wants to do this work has a contract to do this work. And it is, you know, that's the reality of the situation. So it's a much bigger demographic issue within the bar. We have a shrinking number of lawyers in Vermont. The lawyers we have are getting older. Vermont Law School produces almost no lawyers that come to the state of Vermont. And so where I am getting lawyers nowadays is I had a strategy that actually worked pretty well over the last 6 months, where like, if I can't get anybody around here and I'm competing regionally with like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut, whatever, I've got to get out of there because the pay for those lawyers is so high in the private sector, and they have the same demographic issues. I've got to go somewhere else. So I've hired 2 lawyers recently from Florida, one from Kansas, one from New Jersey, one from Maryland. I'm trying to get one from Alaska. By going to the press and saying, "Hey, I've got a problem hiring lawyers," that got picked up nationally. So people that had an inclination maybe to come east said, "Hey, Vermont's nice." And I actually just hired another guy from Nashville, Tennessee. So I've been reaching out far beyond what your normal range of hire would be, to do that. But that's really the issue. It'd be great if they were more people, but they don't exist.
Are you aware of anything we as state government are doing to incentivize practicing law in Vermont?
No, in fact, there's we had the thing where we'll give you 10 grand if you move to Vermont, and then it became 7,500. Oddly enough, lawyers and people who work in the legal field, like paralegal, are specifically excluded from the list. So it's, but there are others, like, nurses and I think teachers or whatever. There's a whole list of people who are on the list, but lawyers and people who are in the legal field are actually specifically excluded. So that's, that would help. But I'm unaware of any other particular thing. The one thing that sort of has been out there is the public service loan forgiveness that was there on the federal level. But there have been some issues lately. I don't know if you've noticed. We've had some folks who, shortly after the new federal administration took over, went to put in their information and the page so that's a problem. We don't have, I know the Vermont Bar Foundation has a little bit of, that's the charitable arm of the bar, has a little bit of a program to deal with some public service loan forgiveness, but it's a really small amount every year. And actually the people who generally work in public defense don't, they actually make more money than what has been allotted to cover those folks. So they don't usually qualify.
That's just helpful landscape, because I know in some of the other fields where, nursing and mental health, where we've had real problems, and we've done some state level, critical loans and grants, and I know law school's expensive.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing is the competition has changed. So, and I've told this story a couple of times. I don't know if you're here, but I have a niece who's brand new out of law school. She graduated from Proctor and went to college in Massachusetts, law school in LLC. When she got out, she got a job at a medium-sized law firm in Massachusetts. And her starting salary alone was $200,000. They paid her $40,000 bonus if she stayed 6 months, and then she got end of the year bonuses if she made her hours. So in her first year, she was getting close to $300,000 in her pocket. A step one attorney in Vermont makes $63,000. Not really competitive. Now, I haven't hired anybody at step one in 6 years. I mean, I have to hire step 4 or 5, so I'm hiring for like the 80 to 90 range, because I wouldn't hire anybody if I was doing step one.
So we are running up 5-ish minutes left. We'll be able to.
Let me just show you. This is important. These are the 4 major ways we do business. Public defender, staff offices, those are state employees. That's what they cost. Public defender, primary public defense contracts, and assigned counsel contracts. This is payment per lawyer equivalent caseload. Okay, payment per LAC. So it's like an FTE, what the average lawyer working 40 hours a week doing public defense work is supposed to do. And I can break all that down, but I got 5 minutes. Then we have the conflict contractors at 183, and ad hoc counsel, which is the 4th way we do business, and far and away the most expensive way we do business, costs 671,000 plus almost 672. And those are pay people, they're getting paid $100 an hour, which isn't even close to market rate. That having been said, the whole system is designed around making the structure that I put in place 24 years ago is designed to make sure that cases don't go to ad hoc counsel. They're like the last on the list, and they're, we absorb them all through our other contracts and through caseload relief contracts. That now represents a minuscule portion of our budget, like less than 1%. You can see over a period of time, this is just to show you like how ad hoc was in 2002. We were at that time where that budget was over $1 million in ad hoc, and now it's we're under 300,000 that we're spending on it a year. We do everything we can to keep those cases out of ad hoc, but every now and then something has to go there. Usually it's like doing arraignments when nobody's available, that kind of thing. And you pay it for an hour for $100, and that's where you go. This is that ups and downs sheet that the budget people really like. I'm not going to spend any time on that. You can look at it if you want. If you have questions, let me know. We go back to what this is kind of a summary of what I already told you, and this is probably the most important one, but I'll explain this. What I had asked for from the administration at the beginning was they came in $117,000 short, which isn't bad, to be to be honest. But one of the things that's important is to keep those assigned counsel conflict contract increases competitive. I had asked for like 4%. They gave me 3%. $57,000. I'm sure they're just trying to make something balanced. But here's one that kind of just annoys me. And I probably should have been, smarter. During COVID, we couldn't get together to do in-person trainings, but it's something that's required by statute. So, well, we can't get together, so I don't need the in-person training money for $60,000. So take it, doesn't matter. Now we get out of COVID, and this will be, I think, the third year in a row that I'm saying, hey, what about that $60,000 I gave you during COVID that I didn't need because you wanted to do something else with it? I need it back. I want the $60,000 back in the budget. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I'm trying to be a good guy, put the money back. So that's easy. It's $117,000. I don't know if I'll ever again give up anything, even if I have to make something up to keep it. But that I was trying to be completely transparent. I bring this up every year, knowing that basically every year, now we're going to the next unfunded additional needs. That $275,000, we have a special fund that's co-pays that goes to public defense services, and that's all it can go to. Every year I get spending authority of $600,000. We never collect $600,000. And so we always start the year at a $275,000 to $300,000 deficit before we do anything. I'm just telling you that, and I say this every single year, that's what happens. I get spending authority, but I don't have the money, and it never comes in. These other three things that have come in are issues that arose after budget development. After we went through the whole process, they've come in the interim. And I think they would have been accounted for, but for the fact that we didn't know about them at the time. Some might remember that a couple of years ago, I created a data bank, data farm in the Rutland office that is now absorbing all of the digital discovery that we're getting from law enforcement and the like. And there's a lot of it. It's more and more and more. And there was a proposal by ADS that would have cost a certain amount of money. And I looked at that and said, I think we can do it better and cheaper. So I have this data farm. I have to add some capacity to it for $30,000. That data farm that I created saves over $500,000 a year compared to what we would have had to pay if we went with the ADS proposal. So the 30 grand is just adding capacity to that. And because we just need more terabytes of space. And I didn't know about that when we were building the budget. IT people kind of work on their own schedule, so to speak. But the other thing we didn't know is the place we're renting in Addison County for our public defender space. The building was sold. The new landlord doesn't want to rent to us. So we're out. And to move, there's going to be a rent increase. There would have been a rent increase to some degree anyway, but it's going to go up about 20 grand. And then we have to fit up the space to make it usable for us with security and IT upgrade. And that's the 50 grand. And I didn't know about those two things, the rent increase, the 50,000. This is how quickly things change, by the way. The Orleans, I was in the process. I almost had to do an Orleans staff office, but I did get now I have a confirmed contract with somebody to take over the contract that was in Orleans County. It's been there for decades. That was a contract office from the beginning of time, which means 1972, beginning of time. As the Defender General's office, that's the beginning of time. That's started. But anyway, so I don't worry about the 250,000 because I was able to get a contractor in there. That having been said, those other the 30,000, 20,000, 50,000, those I'm gonna have to pay it one way or the other. And if it doesn't end up in the budget, what it means is somebody's going to lose a contract. I'll take a contractor out.
So just to clarify, you're saying, did you just say that 250 is not needed?
The one at the bottom, the one that's at Orleans staff office.
So the unfunded additional needs is 742 minus 250.
Yeah. Yes, the public defender special fund is an ongoing issue. I would love at some point before I retire to have that resolved so it makes actual sense. But I know that every year I start with a hole that involves the special funders. I know that it's used to balance budgets when you don't know what else to do. They just get more spending authority if there's not going to be any money, and then I got to find it during the course of a year. The other three are I just have to spend the money. There's no way around it. So that next 100,000 is then it just happens to be that a caseload relief contract costs $100,000. That's just one way to look at it. And so if I don't get the money to cover those things, like if I don't get the contract increases, which I'm going to have to give, and the in-person training, which I am going to have to do, it's basically a couple $100,000 and it's going to come out of direct service. So I really have no choice. In the concept, in the $29 million budget, more or less, it's not the worst thing to have to deal with in the world, but it is, that's the reality. So.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, that's all. Okay, thanks.
Don't forget the last page.
I did. I got it. Of course, I've got stuff now in here that's I can't even stop.
All right, so I did ask Sarah Robinson if she'd be able to come in tomorrow, and it looked like she can. That's great. So that will give our state attorneys, we're up next, 40 minutes rather than 30. So floor is yours.
You should get rid of me.
I think I can, yes. I'll do that.
Maybe it's fitting to get on there.
Yeah, I should have started last time, right?
Not 9:40 grams.
transition. Yeah, that's all. We're done.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Otherwise, it's still here. I mean, it's still on. So just that's the end. Saying that. I think.
Are we good right now or?
Yeah, yeah. I got this grand, like literally. Hey. Now talking to. They change your decision.
Only one.
Floor is yours.
Tim Leaders, Dumont, Executive Director for the Department of State Attorneys and Sheriffs.
Hi, good morning. I'm Annie Newman with the Front States Attorney's and Sheriff's. So I serve as Labor Relations Manager and Operations and involved in much of our fiscal work.
Just to start off, you have on your website a two-page document. We have loads of documents and data that we've submitted to the appropriations committees, and absolutely happy to share those as well. You have much of the
Do
same.
you have hard copies?
I do not have hard copies of this.
They can be good. Yeah.
And it is just 2 pages, luckily. But basically, we've broken down our memo, and I'll start with the first piece here, and Annie can really tackle the next 2 pieces about what happened in the House and what we were asking for in the Senate. But just a reminder on the data snapshot, our department has about 99% of the criminal cases are assigned to our 14 offices in terms of the state's attorneys. Each attorney has about 365 cases per attorney. Well above any notion of best practices. And Bob and I will work on whatever that is for Vermont at some point at the VBA about what best practices are for prosecutors. But it's an area of academic interest that I'm looking into. 600 cases per victim advocate. If you break it down by admins, it's about 800 cases per administrative professional in our department. They actually have all of the cases, if you think about it, so it's harder to break down, but 23,500 cases as of our year-end snapshot. We're working on a May snapshot update, which we'll present to you, send over when that occurs. We're dealing with, as of year end, 96 pending homicides. Some have gone to trial since that time in December. Some have been filed. To include investigations that we're working on, search warrants, et cetera, like an unsolved case down in Rutland County that was of notoriety. Our offices are actively working on things like search warrants, providing legal advice, and working with other states, et cetera. So over 100 if you include the investigations. Our department is solely responsible for, as of year end, 94 of those 96 homicides that were pending. The AG's office is assisting as I believe co-counsel in a couple of those cases of the 96. In 2024, the average monthly filing for criminal cases was about 1,200 cases per month. There's different ups and downs in the year, as you can see in the judicial data. At the end of 2024, we had about 1,000 more than criminal, as we all know. It's 1,000 pending juvenile delinquency cases right on the nose, 1,000 at the year end, which is interesting snapshot. 400 YO cases, which I don't need to remind you what YO stands for in this committee, and about 1,200 CHINS cases. Those are filing to all of Title 33 is about engaging services, but those are where the child has been abused, neglected, et cetera. Sometimes those cases can be like the United Nations when you go into family court, lots of different parties and interested folks, very complex. Another note, just because this committee has worked on it for a number of years, at the end of 2024, there was 667 individuals with 5 or more pending cases, representing 5,307 total cases, 1/4 of the total workload for the state. 17 individuals, 20 or more pending cases, representing about 150 individuals with 10 or more pending cases, representing about 2,200 cases. And so, I say that with part because we can do a lot of great work, about 90% of our justice system, but when the 10% starts to bottle up, it can create real workflow issues for the rest of what we do. That's a data snapshot, and I think Annie will talk about what happened over in the House as it sort of arrived over in the Senate for you all.
Thank you. Thank you. So the House Appropriations bill came across with basically three things. I think you all know that when the budget documents are presented to the departments, we get a worksheet that we have to complete. And in that worksheet, there's the bottom line that the governors recommend that we have to get to. So in order for us, because we have a very, very small operating budget in both our state attorneys, sheriffs, we have to get to that bottom line. And in so doing, we build in those, that number into our vacancy savings. So we discussed that with the House members, said for us to absorb a $650,000 vacancy saving number in both the state attorneys and the sheriff's budget, we would have to hold 6 positions open, probably in some cases for most of the year to reach that. So we basically asked if they would fill that hole, restore us back, put that money back into our base so that we start out on July 1st with our heads above water, basically just where we are. So they did that. The other piece they came across from the houses was, so there were 2 things, the $650 each for vacancy saving restoration. And one other thing, which was they recommended that 9 of our limited service positions be extended for a year. Those positions, money for those positions is in our base budget. We had a conversation this morning with Commissioner Gresham and said, it was this incredibly strange process last year at the end of the year. They went in as permanent, came out of conference as limited, but the money went into our base. So we have the money in our base. Commissioner Gresham.
They just don't have job security.
They just don't have job security.
Right.
So what we've asked for is, and just want to confirm that we saw it that way. Did Commissioner Gresham also see it that way? We received $2,023,000. Last year for these positions, these limited service positions, but they still call them limited. So we've been asking for we asked the House if you would just make them permanent because the money is in our base and we have the position numbers. We're not going to come to you for more positions from the position pool. We're not going to come to you for money. This is just a matter of changing the language in the appropriations bill. And so that is that was one of the things we asked and didn't come through that way.
This is always a dicey question, but can you give us a sense of what their logic was? Because as you lay it out, there's no gain to not fulfilling that request. So I don't get and especially why it might change in conference.
Yeah, Tim reminded me, I had forgotten this, but there was some conversation apparently that there's a 2-year plan. We're going to give you the positions as limited. And then next, we'll fix it.
Full type.
Like full type.
Full type.
I had forgotten that. Tim was like, "Do you remember that's what we were told?" I said, "I think I had wiped it off my memory card." So it's a no cost issue, and we've been talking about that. This is no cost, it's cleaning the language. And those positions are spread out in the field. They're not central office positions. They're legal assistants and deputy state's attorneys and victim advocates out in the field offices. So we think it's important. So without, if it were to remain, if they remain as limited service, then what we say to those folks is, so the good news is you're not being laid off this June 14th, you're laid off next June 14th. The problem with being in a limited position in state government is, or I think anywhere, is that you kind of always have an eye out for a different position, and that's hard because these are not easy positions to retain anyway.
And one other thing I'll add, because you just heard the backlog presentation from Matt, so you don't get to hear it from us, is that cases take longer now than they've ever taken before. So if you have a 1-year position, you may not see a case that you file go to trial until you're in another job. If you have a limited service position, and that's not appropriate for victims or defendants. It's nothing more stressful. I have heard looking at some of my defense cards when a prosecutor that's been carefully reviewing the facts and circumstances engaged in plea negotiations is then no longer the prosecutor, and you get a brand new person that has, sometimes they're just getting their feet under them. And maybe they don't like the prior negotiation. It goes out the window because you have a new party. So limited service helps the health of our limited service to permanent helps the health of our system in terms of case resolution as well, from my perspective.
If you're in a limited service position that's conducting a sort of a set type of process, like maybe handling the expungements, getting them out of the system, those don't have an impact. They do to the person, but if that position were to go away, it just slows down the but as Tim said, there's not a real person on the other end of that paperwork process, so to speak, as it is with the victim advocates and the deputy counsel and things like that. So we're really concerned about that. It's a no-cost item. So that's what the House did, those three things. Restored 650 and extended the limited service. So the funding request that out from that was presented to the House was asking for positions that would include obviously the vacancy saving piece, but would also include a fiscal support person, administrative and paralegal support, victim advocates, transport deputies. Now, this was the broad list that the state's attorneys and the sheriffs had originally put forward in the House. Included in this memo, Senator Norris and I have had a couple of conversations about, what would it look like if it was somewhat different from this. And we recognize that this is an extremely difficult budget year for all of you. We desperately need additional positions. And if at some point you were to ask us to talk to our state's attorneys, come back with more upscaled analysts, we are able to accommodate that. I think the critical pieces for us would be to get more positions out in the field and to get one fiscal person into central office, primarily so that Barbara Bernardini, our longtime fiscal manager, isn't the only person handling 175 employees, 29 offices. So that's going to be a real challenge come September for her. So we just would like to keep that on the radar. All the positions, getting a paralegal, we call them legal assistant or assistant, getting those folks into our offices really does help with taking the work of preparing discovery packets, bringing witnesses in, help with depositions. It's all very, very important. And
Watching body camera.
yeah, watching body camera. To the extent that we cleared 3,000 cases off the docket last year, which is great. I think that's helpful. We want to do more. We want to be able to move the cases quicker and faster, because the only things right now that are rising onto the docket are the very serious crimes. And everything should get its resolution as quickly as possible. It's not fair to people with misdemeanor cases that are taking forever and ever. Those people deserve to be resolved too.
So just to make sure I have it clear, essentially what you're asking for is 17 new positions and 9 limited service positions converted to permanent positions.
Yes, yes, Senator. The 9, again, because they're no cost, and the other positions in whatever amount we are able to take, we will effectively use.
And if you're able to do this, are you able to rank in order of priority these 4 different subcategories of positions? Which one is absolutely critical versus which one would be great and helpful, but the world won't crash if you don't get it.
Noting that we have also pared it down since the initial request in January, and that this represents 3 different budgets: the fiscal IT, admin, paralegal, and equipment. That's all in the state's attorney's budget. The 4 victim advocates is in the victim advocates budget, and the state transport deputies are in the sheriff's budget. So it is spread across, we have 4 budgets, spread across 3 budgets, just as a note.
I think that I've subsequent to my meetings with Senator Norris, I think he's had an opportunity to speak with our vice chair of the sheriff's committee. I think that we have been looking at potentially could we manage with 3 additional positions. Part of the challenge for us has been Franklin County,
There's the transport.
the transport deputies, and Bennington. Bennington seems to be really struggling getting north with just 2 positions when they have to pick somebody up at Newport, and there's not an available what we call a handoff somewhere in the middle of the state. They're really struggling, and it's affecting them as employees, and it's affecting the overtime budget for them too. But we'd like to, I think priority probably would be for us would be the paralegal admin section. Our victim advocates, we're, that budget is stressed and a bit stressed anyway, because it really doesn't, it's not a big budget. It doesn't have an operating budget. The state's attorneys help underwrite some of their expenses, their cell phones, things like that, because they're in our offices and we feel like that's appropriate. But, we would, you know, I think that Franklin County, and Rutland County, are really struggling to keep their victim advocate caseload. So our admins are, I want to just remind, if you've never heard me say this, it's important to know that some of our offices only have one administrative staff person and most of them only have two. So that's a pretty heavy caseload. You know, if you think about the Rutland office, Rutland actually has three, but if you think about Windsor or Wyndham with two administrative assistants, with caseloads of their carrying, that's pretty tough because they're doing, as Tim said, every case that comes in, they have to handle it and touch it in some way.
And file.
And file.
Yep. Yeah, with the e-filing system, the days of the police officer dropping off physical packets in the courthouses are, for many reasons, slowing. There's still some agencies that do that. But if the admin's receiving large troves of digital information, sometimes printing out some things and then doing after the state's attorney or deputy state's attorney has signed off on potential charges, which sometimes differ greatly from what the police officer drops off to us. The admin that has to actually do the filing once we've signed the information of the charges. There was a lot of back and forth, and the admins end up becoming experts in how case flow happens on our offices because they see everything come in, how it comes out. They even start coming in and saying things like, "I have this happen on a regular basis. Tim, this was a DUI one, but I look at the affidavit. Looks like it's also an influence case and maybe a neg off because they were all over the road before the influence." I mean, like stuff like that. They're really the engines of the whole department. I mean, they're really incredible. And Jen Bufard testified upstairs from Chittenden County, 37 years. You've seen a few state's attorneys come through the office up there. And I will say we've had Senator Norris in his double committeeship work has had the opportunity to see us a lot. And we've enjoyed, working with you, Senator and Vice Chair, on that the difficult budget year that you're in. Like, we know if we just came in here and listened to our own stuff, everyone thinks that they're the center of the universe when they talk to you all. We understand that we do feel like we play an important critical infrastructure role in how voters feel about what government's doing, particularly if you're a victim of crime or a defendant. But I think it's an important thing. And last year we did believe that, for example, those limited service positions were going to be permanent. Where we worked with what we were given. And I think that the permanency of those positions is essential to us doing our jobs effectively. And so we're not coming back here next year saying, "Hey, last year we said these positions were going to go away. They're going away again." And I think that's incredibly important. And the additional positions are going to help with things like pre-charge, right? You've heard testimony just prior about pre-charge. I assume that's going to be rolling out in a more organized fashion. Paralegals and legal assistants can help tremendously with how that type of program is going to work. A new officer from the academy may not understand what pre-charge is. Legal assistant or paralegal hand a piece of paper saying, "Hey, here's the 101 on pre-charge of this office. The deputy state's attorney doesn't need to talk to you because they're in trial right now. Here's how this is going to work." So it's a cost-effective way for us to do our work. And they support the victim advocates and the deputies and the state's attorneys, those paralegals and admins. And I will say, looking across state government, it is rare of a department of our size and breadth in 14 counties with 28 offices to have one fiscal person. And having worked in the treasurer's office, I am borderline appalled that it's on one person like that. Key person risk is something I think about, particularly as some people are allowed to move on to retirement whenever they so choose. But it's an important thing that I want you all to be aware of. That if I look more stressed next year in front of you, it's because we know you're in a tough year on the federal side and the education funding, but this is something that we also think is critical to the health of the department long term.
Senator Bowles.
I have a couple of questions around, and you're probably not going to be surprised by this, but around the backlog and the cost of the backlog and how these asks would impact the backlog. So
Yep.
I have other questions too, but let's start with my backlog focused ones.
Oh, and I actually feel bad. I didn't mention that up front because I did listen to some of Matt Valerio's testimony. From our perspective, the backlog is a direct correlation of how the system is functioning. And with paralegals, admins, victim advocates, the way that they review cases, a victim advocate running down the hallway, hey, a victim wants to settle today. Like the offer that you presented, Deputy State's Attorney X, they're okay with something less than that. If you have victim advocates with 600 cases, they have less time to have those conversations, which are statutorily required with each prosecutor. More victim advocates means more time with each case, means less backlog because we're able to dismiss, resolve, send to diversion, deflect with pre-charge. I call pre-charge deflection because that's what it is. And with paralegals and admins, when they see something coming in, a juvenile's name ends up on an affidavit in a criminal case. That's a big no-no. An admin with 800 cases is going to be able to say, nope, send it back to the officer, put the initials back in there so you're not breaking Title 33 for Title 13 law, and send it back to us. If you don't have the time and the due diligence, cases back and forth, and the admins play a real essential role in terms of shuffling the attorneys. You got 30 cases on this week. Have you made offers in those cases? I mean, some of our admins are truly doing that work to push the backlog. And if we had more opportunities to spend more time with each case, we would clearly move more cases, in my opinion. But we're working with a system that's still being funded as if we're dealing with VHSs and paper. We're not. We're dealing with huge amounts of body camera, enormous amounts of body camera, even for misdemeanor cases that we have to look at. And paralegals and admins looking through that case, they might find what I would describe as either opportunities or pitfalls in body camera footage. And if it's a pitfall, case might have to get dismissed. Someone did follow protocol roadside. If it's an opportunity, like, hey, he admitted to 17 other crimes, right? You have to watch the body cam for that. Or he lied to the police officer. That's an opportunity to resolve the case because there's more leverage. So in my opinion, it's an essential part of the equation. The attorneys are trying their best, but they need the support of that whole office working as one organism. So sorry, I really care about how we're functioning with the backlog. And I think we're on the cusp of having a good group of judges that understand that they have a responsibility as well to put cases in front of attorneys to move. We need to make sure that the other leg is appropriately funded to respond to that type of work from the judges.
And so I guess my sort of follow-up to that is if there's been any fiscal analysis done of how much the backlog costs, because I imagine someone sitting for 5 years before they make it through the system costs a lot more than that. Not happening.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, yes, it's much more costly to have someone wait around for justice, whether they're a victim or a defendant, than it is to quickly move them through the system. And it also, as you know, decreases the likelihood that accountability will have a deterrent effect. So backlog also impacts the outcomes. And we're trying to fix the use of the term recidivism so it actually reflects what it does. But recidivism is another piece of backlog. If someone's sitting for 5 years, they have cases piling up. Their sense of what the justice system is doing, it's going to be a much different experience than someone that says, hey, your trial's in 90 days, your final pre-trial's in 45 days. We're done in 90 days. Like that sets a different tone. And with backlog, we're honestly not able to tell people that because the aggravated domestic or homicide case is always going to trump the excessive speeding case on Route 62, which can sometimes result in a homicide as well. So it's like always false choices that we're having to make with backlog. And it costs a lot of money.
Okay, but we don't have a dollar figure.
No.
Okay. My other question is, what is the average caseload of a state's attorney or a deputy state's attorney right now?
We did an analysis at year end, and it was about 350 per attorney.
Are there professional standards for what is a reasonable caseload?
I'll send you that. There's been really good work done on how many defense attorneys should be handling, keeping in mind that defense attorneys having a personal interaction with clients is a different experience than working with victims or witnesses. They're not. It's a slightly different type of work. And sometimes it's much more difficult, by the way, to work with a client than it is to work on behalf of the state. And sometimes when you're working with 30 witnesses and victims, it may be the opposite. So just noting that that's the case. We had done a look at Northwestern, did some work on this. Northwestern, I think their law school actually did some work. And it's basically, if you have too many cases, you're doing borderline malpractice, right? Because you're not able to look at every case, whether you're a defense attorney or a prosecutor. I think the analysis was you shouldn't be handling more than 400 misdemeanors in a calendar year or 200 felonies. Snapshot data should be really scary. That's a snapshot. That means that they are handling. If they're having 365 at a snapshot in time, it means that they have potentially handled, given that there's 1,200 cases filed a month, they have potentially already handled 400 misdemeanors or 200 felonies in a year. And when I say the word handled, it's like, think about the whole spectrum of the intercept. It's reviewing the affidavit, filing it, doing witness prep, preparing for trial, making plea negotiations. So we are definitely well over the standards for how prosecutors should be handling the caseloads that they have. Connecticut, you're supposed to spend a couple of years with misdemeanors before you graduate to felonies. In Vermont, you just get everything as soon as you step in the door.
And are you having similar challenges recruiting attorneys as the Defender General? They testified that there are no attorneys.
So we've been doing, I think, relatively well. Our challenge points are the Northeast Kingdom. And I think some of that has just been, they've always been a little bit harder to fill positions. Shouldn't post a vacancy, they usually, state's attorney Sarah George will have, 4 or 5 resumes relatively quickly. I think Bennington has had some problems. I don't know if that's just sort of a little bit of a, maybe people see that as sort of out of the way also, but I think the Kingdom, they have had problems, but we've done very well in the past year of recruiting and filling our vacancies.
Are you keeping those attorneys?
Well, that is a bit of a challenge. So, and I think a very good question. I want to say yes and no. Some of our longtime folks who are in the system and can see the end of the tunnel towards their state retirement. Maybe like 30 years, and some of those people are actually coming up. We look at one of our key attorneys in the Chittenden County area, Susan Harden, and Diane Wheeler of Franklin, people that we all have known because of their the kind of work that they've done for the state of Vermont. Our challenge, Senator, is really this, that we have to be in the office all the time. And we're not rural workers. And so our staff are because of the court schedule, the demands and everything, we're in, and we have been for ever. So, basically as soon as the courts reopen, everybody was in the offices. So we're not only competing, we're competing with a lot of other departments in state government where it's essentially they're still doing remote work, coming to the office one day a week. That's a challenge. Mm-hmm. And the people that we have lost, since both Tim and I and John Campbell before us, but we would obviously know all of them, talk to them if they were going out. We do exit interviews. A lot of times they were two things I heard is I have the opportunity to basically do more remote work. That really appeals to me. And I have no work-life balance in this job because I have 365 cases. And people are chasing down the aisle of the grocery store yelling at me because I was in court and prosecuted.
None of you have ever experienced that.
Right, exactly.
I can relate to that one.
Yeah. And that's what they get a lot of. So that's good, the challenge. So I think
they have so much experience. If you work for a department for 2 years to get files, and you don't get a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And then they bring you to other places.
Well, that is one of our recruitment points. We say to them, you're not going to get the kind of courtroom experience and the kind of broad brush experience you're going to get anywhere else unless you're sent here. You'll be in court. And for many people who want that experience, it's really great. And what we should say is you're going to be in court all the time. You're going to get yelled at by everybody. It's tough as nails by the time you finish this job. But yes, that has been the challenge. And I know one of our folks from Chittenden who went over to the AG's office came over to see me before she left, and she had just had a baby. She's like, I just can't do what I'm doing, and with basically living through all the. So it is that work. I really appreciate the people that are looking for something for work-life balance. You can't fault for that. It's important self-awareness issue. I think it's,
And it's a department that, Annie may slap my hand for saying this, but really incredibly small training. So we train two ways, by fire in the courtroom and the judges. And we get together once a year for a few days and train each other for the most part. The people that have experience, train people with less experience. And that goes for victim admins and state's attorneys. And, as a forewarning for next year, so no one's surprised, like the state's attorneys believe that we should have more opportunities for training, but we're in for all the time. So those opportunities are between noon and 1, maybe, and after hours. So it's,
and judicial college.
and during June each year, we communicate with territory zones and zoning.
There's a week in June where the courts don't hold hearings. It's called Judicial College Week. And we and the Defender General and the courts all try to get their training done during that period of time.
Yeah.
So.
So my last question is if there are any deputy state's attorneys or state's attorneys that would be able to come talk to us about so that sort of working conditions are, because I think it would be good to hear from the people on the ground what's going on.
And I'll add that the BSEA organized 3 people from our front lines in the House that provided excellent array of testimony from 3 different types of jobs: deputy, admin, and victim advocate. I think we spent about an hour with House Judiciary and did a great job outlining the different types of work that are.
I think that would just be helpful to get the sort of context.
Absolutely, we can do that.
I don't know that we'll be able to do it for 9:15 tomorrow,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something I want to have.
Yeah, and certainly if you want one of our essays or some of the field people, if you it's easier remote from the courthouses.
But there's also the link to the testimony that was done by the it was not a state's attorney, but it was Zach Wade, deputy state's attorney, Washington County, then placed one to account victim advocate, and Jonathan Buford, long-term admin supervisor for the Chittenden office. So they gave testimony. We can give you that link if you want to just listen to it.
Yeah, we'll send you that link in the document.
And I think it would be easier at some point for a Zoom link with like maybe one or two of the state's attorneys could kind of just give you that stuff. But thank you. That's a good question about the recruitment retention.
Senator Ruth.
So Defender General Valerio might fall over his chair if I say this, but I do want to say this. No, he's not here. But I want to say that 2 things that he mentioned, and I do want to tell you that there were important points. One is his storage. He was talking about the storage capacity and the thing he was doing around. We are now paying, and so I empathize with what he was saying. We're now paying $18,000 a month for our storage on our SharePoint. That's just our video channel. So it's very expensive. It really is. So kind of John is accurate when he says he had to look at all sorts of options to carry that. That was a big bill. I mean, that was a big hit. $18,000 a month, and that came to us this year.
Is there anything we can do to lower that cost?
Well, ADS is working on that. Matt mentioned that ADS is working on the solution, but it hasn't materialized yet. But I just want to say that when Matt mentioned that, I really felt his pain on that one. And he mentioned that the other thing is, when you move into a new space, and Matt had it on there about, he was talking about two fit up costs. One is ADS and the other was security. And those are both costs that departments bear. You need them to get in and do the wiring for ADS has to go in ahead of time, and security goes in. All of that is a cost borne by the departments at this point. And so it's, he mentioned that, and I have three moves happening. Windsor County, because the courthouse, the renovation did not include us. You might remember that. And I got Brattleboro because the building was sold to a brewery, and that's been a real challenge that they have direct elevated connection into our building. And yet, yesterday somebody was smoking pot. The door opened up and everybody could smell the pot.
When did that say trying to move? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because the
Where they
building
trying to go?
well, someplace there's another spot down in Brattleboro.
Hopefully not another box.
And then Orlean, same thing happening in terms of the court basically saying like, go away. So we've had fit up costs, and I just wanted to say that when I saw that out Matt's presentation, I wanted to let you know that the ADS costs and the security costs do get borne by the departments, and we have some of the same challenges. Matt will be happy I support it.
Committee, any additional questions? Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Very much.
Thank you.
Let's share. Yeah, come in.